Hello, everyone. Welcome, friends. It's time to journey to the heart of winter, where many mysterious things can be found. Thanks for joining me, guys. This is going to be mostly a scripted live stream. I was originally going to do an open Dany Q&A today, but I changed my mind because I just had more ideas that I wanted to get to you guys before we opened it up for Q&A. So we'll be taking questions as we go, particularly if they are on topic, but some of those questions I might be filing away for later. But with that being said, I want to dive right in, guys. So near the end of Born to Burn the Others, the last video that I put out, which you've hopefully watched, I quoted a passage from Dany's last A Dance with Dragons chapter, where Dany is remembering her flight from Daznak's pit on Drogon's back. It went like this. It said, "North they flew, beyond the river, Drogon gliding on torn and tattered wings through clouds that whipped by like the banners of some ghostly army." Pretty good symbolism stuff, right? Banners of a ghostly army, it sounds like the others, flying north beyond the river. And of course, we also quoted the longer passage from that same chapter where she's attacked by ants that cross over a tumbled down stone wall that Dany thinks must look like the wall of Westeros to them. It's pretty great foreshadowing. And together, these quotes seem to be pointing towards Dany crossing over the wall to confront the ghostly army of the others, in all likelihood flying north on Drogon's back. And I guess I sort of forgot to sort of play up the fact that, of course, the others ride ice spiders. And in Jon's dream, they're climbing up the wall. So it's a very good likeness with the ants climbing over the wall here. It's a good parallel to Jon's Azor High dream. And as I pointed out, or as I didn't point this out, I cut off the video last time, right as I was about to talk about Jon. It was a very tough decision, guys. I almost wanted to go into some Jon stuff, but decided not to because I needed to get the video out. And I saved it for today. And it's a good thing I did, because when I started diving into the Jon and Dany parallel scenes, well, there was all kinds of stuff. So, like I said, it's very likely that when she goes over the wall, she'll be, going with Jon when they go to the heart of the winter. And so I found a Jon quote from A Dance with Dragons, which basically matches these Dany quotes about crossing the wall and seeing the banners of the others almost exactly. So check this out. Jon is standing atop the wall, and he's thinking about the others, and he sees, well, icy banners. It says, 700 feet up, Jon Snow stood looking down upon the haunted forest. A north wind swirled through the trees below, sending thin white plumes of snow crystals flying from the highest branches like icy banners. Elsewise, nothing moved, not a sign of life. That was not entirely reassuring. It was not the living that he feared, even so. So, you can see right here, Jon is standing atop the wall. He sees the icy banners. It's very comparable to Dany remembering the ghostly banners and then crossing over the wall in the same chapter. Hey, everyone, by the way, I see some people shouting me out in the chat. Welcome. Thanks for joining me. Appreciate y'all. Sunday, Starry Wisdom Sunday, all that stuff. So, like I said, Jon is seeing the banners of snow and ice. They're flying from the trees of the haunted forest, and that, of course, is where the others come from. So this really is like looking out across a battlefield, seeing the army of the enemy, only they're haunted trees. We're going to talk more about that. Definitely haunted trees. We're going to get back to the Undying. But here's the second part of that quote. Jon's thinking to himself, he says, "The sun is out. The snow is stopped. It may be a moon's turn before we have another chance as good. It may be a season. Have Emmett assemble his recruits," he told Dolorous Ed. "We'll want an escort. 10 rangers armed with dragon glass. I want them ready to leave within the hour." So very cool. When he sees the banners of snow and ice flying from the haunted forest trees, he's thinking about the others. Then he decides, must be a good time to send, a dozen or so rangers armed with dragon glass north into the wood. And I could definitely see some version of this scene playing out again in the future, but with Jon and Dany headed northward together, perhaps with a dozen companions, maybe, armed with dragon glass and Valyrian steel. Very Last Hero and his band of 12 like, perhaps. And both of these foreshadowing scenes, the one with Dany in Dance with Dragons and the one with Jon here in A Dance with Dragons, they both place them at the wall, looking north to face the others and seeing those banners. So to me, it's a good clue that there is a common destiny that lies north of the wall with Jon and Dany. And of course, it's not exactly counterintuitive. Hey, Kraken Tacos, Alicia Kingston, Guilty Undertaker, many other names I recognize. It's not exactly counterintuitive, right? To say that Jon and Dany are going to go north, do something against, to fight the others. So it's going to be one of the big contrasts between the show and the books as far as how those things play out at the end, of course. And in my mind, this journey to the heart of winter is really the most important thing that Jon and Dany will do together. It's more important than any politics or potential romance. And this is really the obvious reason for Jon to have a secret Targaryen heritage in the first place. To ride a dragon. Now, I don't know if Jon and Dany will have a romance or what that would even look like, since Jon will be resurrected at that point, and maybe Dany, who knows. But they will be the last two Targaryens in the world, and I expect that fact to draw them together. Targaryens, of course, are known for their dragons, and Jon's embracing of his Targaryen heritage pretty much makes him the perfect co-pilot for this final mission into the heart of winter that I think is being foreshadowed. Jon and Dany are both similarly alone in the world, cut off from all family, and they both have a similar moral compass that requires them to step into the breach and protect those who need protecting. In fact, I think Jon and Dany have a lot of basic characteristic parallels, which I'm not going to get into today. We're mostly going to go for symbolism today, but they're definitely very parallel in many ways. So I am planning on doing a Winds of Winter predictions video with Quinn and Gray Area to discuss all the ramifications of RLJ as it plays out in the books. And I'm going to try to do that as soon as possible, guys. But the show obviously didn't do very much with RLJ except use it as a political wedge. So look out for more discussion on that as far as the sort of how the RLJ is going to play out in that video. But suffice it to say for now that Jon and Dany seem destined to form some sort of multifaceted partnership that involves dragons and enables them to work together at the conclusion of the story. So, like I said, guys, this is going to be a semi-scripted topical live stream, not a topical cream, topical live stream, and pretty excited about these ideas, guys. Not only are we going to talk about Jon and Dany journeying to the heart of winter, we're going to talk about what they will find in the heart of winter, what they'll have to do there. I'm going to explain to you what I think in the symbolism, about the symbolism of the shade of the evening trees, what that's all about, what that means in regards to the others. And we're also going to talk about a potential intersection between the Daenerys dragon side of things and the weirwood and greenseer side of things, which is where I think all of this is leading. And of course, I've talked about this many times, like the dragon stuff is kind of off to the side. You have the others and the weirwoods and the greenseer magic pretty obviously all connected in the north, but we're all waiting to see how the dragons and that side of the magic comes and interacts with everything else. And we're going to talk about that today. So as many of you know, I found quite a bit of evidence suggesting that Nissa of legend was part child of the forest, that she was a magical being with some sort of dryad-like connection to the weirwood trees. Since Dany is one of the most important echoes of Nissa, there's always been this lingering question of how Dany might echo the original Nissa's apparent connection to the weirwoods. And I think I'm starting to get an answer about that. So in any case, like I said at the beginning, I'll be going through notes and quotes that I've prepared in advance, but feel free to send in questions and donations and super chats like the recovering DJ did. LML will be at 30K subs before TWOW comes out. Oh, thanks, Synchronous. Yeah, we're almost there, man. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, now is a great time to do it. We're almost at 30K. That will allow me to do some cool new YouTube stuff with badges and memberships and things like that. So, like I said, you can send in the questions via super chat or via paypal.me/mythicalAstronomy, and I will either take them in the flow if they're on topic, or I'll hold them for the end of the section otherwise. And we'll also take some questions at the end. And then in a couple of days, we'll actually do a proper Dany Q&A session where I'll answer Patreon questions sent in ahead of time. I'll pull some questions and comments from the YouTube video itself, and I'll handle everything you guys can throw at me in the chat. So if you don't get your question answered today, fear not. I'll definitely get it at the Q&A. But like I said, feel free to send them in. Want to wish Elisa patience. myth head and moderator and occasional guest. Happy birthday. It's her birthday today. So happy birthday, Elisa. And Euron 2. Many of you are asking about Euron 2. That is coming. It's probably, I think I'm going to make that my next video. I wanted to get this Dany video in here before the end of the month, but yeah, Euron 2 is already scripted, so probably get into that next. Yes, also I've got to talk about the YouTube conspiracy that's trying to destroy me. It's not really a conspiracy, but for some reason, the YouTube algorithm gods have ceased favoring me. I don't know what else to say. Like, so YouTube gives you a lot of analytics so that you can see how your videos are getting watched. And basically, for some reason, they stopped suggesting my videos. Usually about 25 to 40% of a given video's views, on my channel at least, come from suggestions, meaning YouTube recommends the video after you're done watching another video. You know how you've got like a few that pop up on the right. For some reason, that suggested number went like a few weeks ago. And my new videos are only getting suggested at like 4% and 6%, which is definitely making me cry at night, cry tears into the pillow. So it's kind of weird. YouTube always does stuff like this. They change the algorithms and it's hard to understand what's going on. It's just part of the game, but you guys can help me out basically just by liking, sharing the video, subscribing to the channel if you're not subscribed. Mainly just share the video, leave comments. The more activity on the videos, the more it gets circled around. So I won't belabor the point, but YouTube, for some reason, is taking a shit on my head this month. So I think I'm still doing pretty good work with the Euron and the Dany stuff. But yeah, so there you go. Just leave it at that and ask you guys to help me out, like, subscribe, all that stuff. So let's get back to the script here. Yeah, it's not a conspiracy. It's just weird, non-transparent algorithm stuff. So, yep, comments are great. Appreciate it, guys. And let me also say thank you. All the comments that have been coming in on the new videos are really good. There's a high comment ratio, high like ratio, a lot of good thoughts. So that helps me because when the YouTube metrics, kind of kill you, it's depressing, it's upsetting. But when you go and you see the comments of the people that are watching and you see that people are enjoying the video, that calms that a lot and makes you feel like, still doing good work. So really appreciate all the support in the comments lately. You guys are awesome. Definitely feel that support and appreciate it. So let's talk about the potential links to Jon in the Dany scenes, which we broke down in Born to Burn the Others. So let's go ahead and start with that last Dany chapter from A Dance with Dragons. So one thing that many have picked up on is this line in that chapter, which seems like it could be about Jon. It says, "Off in the distance, a wolf howled. The sound made her feel sad and lonely, but no less hungry. As the moon rose above the grasslands, Dany slipped at last into a restless sleep." So a wolf howling in the distance, right? Maybe that's Jon calling out to her from across the void. Jon is dead right now, by the way. He was just killed 2 chapters ago. So maybe, right? But what's interesting is that actually, if you look at where that passage comes in the chapter, the lines that come before and after that. So let's do a rewind and back up, and I'll read the longer quote. It says, "As the world darkened, Dany settled in and closed her eyes, but sleep refused to come. The night was cold, the ground hard, her belly empty. She found herself thinking of Meereen, of Dario, her love, of Hisdar, her husband, of Irri and Jiqui and sweet Missandei, Sir Barristan and Resnack and Skahan's shave pit. Do they fear me dead? I flew off on a dragon's back. Will they think he ate me?" She wondered if Hisdar was still king. His crown had come from her. Could he hold it in her absence? He wanted Drogon dead. "I heard him. Kill it," he screamed. "Kill the beast." And the look upon his face was lustful. And strong Belwas had been on his knees, heaving and shuddering. Poison. It had to be poison. The honeyed locusts. Hisdar urged them on me, but Belwas ate them all. She had made Hisdar her king, taken him into her bed, opened the fighting pits for him. He had no reason to want her dead. Yet who else could it be? Resnack, her perfumed seneschal, the Yunkai, the sons of the Harpy? Off in the distance, a wolf howled. The sound made her feel sad and lonely, but no less hungry. As the moon rose above the grasslands, Dany slipped at last into a restless sleep. She dreamed. All her cares fell away from her, and all her pains as well, and she seemed to float upward into the sky. She was flying once again, spinning, laughing, dancing as the stars wheeled around her and whispered secrets in her ear. To go north, you must journey south. To reach the west, you must go east. And the rest of Quay's mysterious advice. So, here's the aha. The line about the wolf howling comes right before Dany's Quaithe dream, where she's supposed to go north, and then that flows right into her waking up with the ants, battling the ants, and crossing over the wall. So this wolf howl, it comes in just the right place, right? Those are all the parts that foreshadowed Dany going north. Quaithe tells her to go north, and then she literally pantomimes crossing over the wall to find the home of the ants, which would be equivalent to the home of the others, or the heart of winter. And of course, Jon is the one who should be coming with her. And, remember, he's got that matching Icy Banners quote that we just read. And so now the wolf howl that comes as Dany falls asleep really does seem like it's probably Jon, or at least, a nod to Jon. I think it's meant to be read basically just as it comes off, as a sort of romantic and figurative representation of Jon calling to her from distant Westeros, a wolf howling in the distance. Jon was actually, like I said, killed and assassinated only 2 chapters prior to this chapter. So it really is like Jon's spirit is howling at Dany from the Bardo, which is kind of poetic and romantic and sad. Pretty cool. So the thing in the paragraph before the wolf howl is interesting too, those things. Dany's thinking about flying off on Dragonback and about the people trying to assassinate her. Jon has just been assassinated himself, and flying off on Dragonback is what Jon and Dany would theoretically be doing to journey to the north, to the heart of winter, or anywhere else beyond the wall. But here's the more important connection, and it comes from the deep symbolism. So think about Dany's scene flying out of the carnage and chaos of Daznak's pit on Drogon as a symbolic match to Jon's assassination scene, which happens amidst similar all-out chaos and carnage. They don't seem to be similar at first. Dany is victoriously riding the dragon for the first time while Jon is being assassinated by his brothers. But if you look closer, you can see that they are both attempted assassinations. One works and one doesn't. And both scenes end with Jon and Dany merging with their animal familiar. That's right. There's also similarity in the way that we expect the events to play out after these scenes. Dany's thought dead and is essentially removed from the game in Meereen for a time, but she'll ultimately return to take charge, right? Jon, on the other hand, is actually dead and temporarily removed from the politics of the wall, but will be resurrected and will similarly return to take charge. Now, Dany's entire experience at Daznak's is described. Actually, let me go back. I said something it didn't expand on. I said, so both of these scenes end with them merging with their animal familiar, right? So Dany at the end flies away on her dragon, and Jon, after he's killed, his spirit goes into his wolf. So they're both assassination scenes, and they both then, like I said, sort of fly away into or onto their animals. But let's read this quote about Dany in Daznak's pit. It says, "Drogon," she screamed, "Drogon!" His head turned. Smoke rose between his teeth. His blood was smoking too, where it dripped upon the ground. He beat his wings again, sending up a choking storm of scarlet sand. Dany stumbled into the hot red cloud, coughing. He snapped. "No," was all she had time to say. "No, not me. Don't you know me?" The black teeth closed inches from her face. He meant to tear my head off. The sand was in her eyes. She stumbled over the pitmaster's corpse and fell on her backside. Drogon roared. The sound filled the pit. A furnace wind engulfed her. The dragon's long, scaled neck stretched toward her. When his mouth opened, she could see bits of broken bone and charred flesh between his black teeth. His eyes were molten. "I am looking into hell, but I dare not look away." She had never been so certain of anything. If I run from him, he will burn me and devour me. In Westeros, the Septons spoke of 7 hells and 7 heavens, but the 7 kingdoms and their gods were far away. If she died here, Dany wondered, would the horse god of the Dothraki part the grass and claim her for his starry Khalasar, so she might ride the Nightlands beside her sun and stars? Or would the angry gods of Geese send their harpies to seize her soul and drag her down to torment? Drogon roared full in her face, his breath hot enough to blister skin. Off to her right, Dany heard Sir Barristan Selmy shouting, "Try me! Me, over here!" In the smoldering red pits of Drogon's eyes, Dany saw her own reflection. So let's talk about this scene as representing the pit of hell, because that's what it is. Dany is in Daznak's pit with its blood-red sands, and she's also seeing herself in the red pits of Drogon's eyes. So she's doubly in the red pit of blood and fire. And looking into Drogon's face is also like looking into hell. So this is the pit of hell where she sees herself. The furnace winds are engulfing her. She's tripping over corpses. It's pretty clear. Dany is in some sort of fiery hell here. Now, perhaps this foreshadows some sort of death and resurrection in Dany's future. I do think she could end up resurrected, just like Jon before the end. Or perhaps this is just meant to be seen as a symbolic depiction of transformation and transcendence. Dany has many scenes like that. But either way, she's clearly in hell here in some sense when she mounts the dragon and escapes. And either way, going through this fiery hell before mounting Drogon makes this scene a great match for Jon's scene, where he's experiencing actual death instead of symbolic death before joining with his animal. Dany's in a fiery hell while Jon's death is explicitly icy, taking place at the wall as it does, and excuse me, ending with the infamous line, "He never felt the fourth knife, only the cold." It's a song of ice and fire, after all. Super sticker from Daniel Meredith. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. So more telling here is the animal symbolism. Dany is... Oh, that sucks. The StreamYard didn't show the sticker. But if you look over in the YouTube chat, you can see that it is some sort of blue creature holding forth a cup of what probably coffee, but looks a little bit like blood. Are you offering me blood to drink, Daniel? I don't need coffee. I have Red Bull. So the animal symbolism here is what's important, right? So Dany is almost killed, but then mounts her dragon and flies out of the pit and into the Dothraki Sea, while Jon is actually killed and then has his spirit fly into his wolf ghost, which of course is what happens to all skin changers when their human bodies die. Jon's spirit will begin to merge with his wolf, tightening a relationship already described as a marriage, and Dany's mounting of Drogon, as many recall, is described in explicitly sexual language. Dizzy, Dany closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she glimpsed the Myronese beneath her through a haze of tears and dust, pouring up the steps and out into the streets. The lash was still in her hand. She flicked it against Drogon's neck and cried, "Higher!" Her other hand clutched at his scales, her fingers scrabbling for purchase. Drogon's wide black wings beat the air. Dany could feel the heat of him between her thighs. Her heart felt as if it were about to burst. Yes, she thought, yes, now, do it, take me, fly. So, yeah, yes, now, do it, take me. That's pretty obviously meant to carry innuendo with it. I must point out that Jon is a black dragon, kind of like Drogon. So maybe this is foreshadowing. But I think the main point is similar to describing the green seer tree bond or the skin changer animal bond as marriages. Nobody is fucking wolves or dragons or trees here, but these are alchemical weddings, more or less. And you'll also notice more death language here. After mounting the dragon and closing her eyes, she opens them and sees through a haze of tears, which is just another way of saying veil of tears. And of course, the veil of tears is a reference to the symbolic barrier between life and death. So she's seeing everything through the veil of tears as if she is dead, looking back on the waking world. So final point on Daznak's pit. This is the important part. We see clues about others and whites lurking about, which encourages us to see this scene as offering commentary on Dany journeying to some sort of icy hell. So even though it's clearly a fiery hell scene on its face, the foreshadowing seems to be talking about an icy hell. So check this out. The tumult and the shouting died. 10,000 voices stilled. Every eye turned skyward. A warm wind brushed Dany's cheeks, and above the beating of her heart, she heard the sound of wings. 2 spearmen dashed for shelter. The pitmaster froze where he stood. So the pitmaster, who freezes here, is the symbolic master of this hell. He's the pitmaster. And you'll notice that Dany takes his whip when she conquers Drogon, when she tames Drogon, and that makes her the master of hell. And of course, again, Drogon himself looks like hell. So Dany taking control of Drogon with the whip, that makes her the master of the symbolic hell twice over, basically. And this is, again, very similar to the way that Dany takes the whip known as the Harpy's Fingers from the slave masters of Astapor, which signifies her command of the Unsullied. Dany then burns the masters and frees the Unsullied. And wouldn't you know it, we've got some slave masters waiting to catch on fire here at Daznak's Pit too. A queer look passed across Hisdar zo Lorak's long, pale face. Part fear, part lust, part rapture. He licked his lips. Dany could see the Pauls streaming up the steps, clutching their tow cars and tripping over the fringes in their haste to be away. Others followed. Some ran, shoving at one another. More stayed in their seats. So Hisdar is the head slave master, really, since he's the king of Meereen, and he's the one who represented the slave masters in negotiating with Dany. And Lorak is, of course, a very wealthy slave master house. Now, Hisdar appeared in Dany's dream in a different part of A Dance with Dragons with blue lips and the infamous ice stick. So we've already pretty much identified Hisdar as a symbolic Night's King, leader of the others figure. And that fits with the slave masters representing the others. And wouldn't you know it, some of the slave masters in the scene are called others when it says others followed. And then also shoving at one another. And there's more of that coming. Real quickly, I see a few of you saying you didn't get notified. So one thing that YouTube has done to screw with everyone is they have changed the subscription bell to now a submenu. So when you click on the subscription bell, you have to select which notifications you want, like some, all, or none. So you have to click subscribe, you have to click the notification bell, and then you have to click all after that. So it's a triple click. It's a three-way click. And that's really ridiculous on YouTube's part, but it is what it is. So if you didn't get a notification, that is why. So then a moment later, we read, "Kill it," Hisdar zo Lorak shouted to the other spearmen. "Kill the beast." Aha, so there's our head other Hisdar commanding an other spearman to slay the dragon, which makes sense. One of the spearmen even hits Drogon and lodges a spear in his back. So perhaps the others will indeed have something like the ice spear that the TV show Night King has to kill the dragons. I definitely think something like that makes sense. I mean, if the dragons can melt the others with their fire, then the others will need some sort of a good weapon to make it a fair fight, right? And a lot of you commented something about that on the video, saying, well, look, if the dragons can melt the others, it's going to be easy. Well, no, I expect that the others would have ice weapons like the spear, or definitely those cold winds and the mists. We've seen that Alisanne's dragon Silverwing doesn't want to fly past the wall. It sort of flies away from it 3 times. So that implies that the cold magic might sort of repel the dragons in some sense. So I definitely think it's going to be a fair fight. It's not going to be a matter of the dragons just flying in and burning the others and that's it, easy peasy. That obviously wouldn't be fun. So yes, we'll have cold winds and maybe some ice spears and all that stuff. In any case, Hisdar commanding the other spearmen is followed shortly by this paragraph with 3 uses of the word other. The spearmen were running too. Some were rushing towards the dragon, spears in hand. Others were rushing away, throwing down their weapons as they fled. The hero was jerking on the sand, the bright blood pouring from the ragged stump of his shoulder. His spear remained in Drogon's back, wobbling as the dragon beat his wings. Smoke rose from the wound. As the other spears closed in, the dragon spat fire, bathing 2 men in black flame. His tail lashed sideways and caught the pitmaster creeping up behind him, breaking him in 2. Another attacker stabbed at his eyes until the dragon caught him in the jaws and tore his belly out. Others were rushing away as the other spears closed in, and another attacker stabbed at his eyes. So we've got 3 others running around the pit here at Hisdar's command. Now, one thing I'm not sure of is the hero here. It's a little bit hard to describe. So it's referring to this one spearman who first leapt down to face Drogon and lodged the spear in his back. He's also referred to as the Dragon Slayer. So I'm not sure who this person is. He seems to be fighting with the others. at Hizdar's command, but he's called the hero and the dragon slayer. So is this maybe the Night King? You know, like I suggested, somebody's going to become a leader of the others, whether that's Euron, you know, or somebody else. So perhaps that's who this is, but I'm not really sure. So you guys tell me. It does say that his arm is left in a ragged stump. So maybe that's a weirwood clue, but I'm not really sure. What I can say is that the dead hero and the dead pitmaster are, and Hizdar and all of the spearmen called others, they're all attacking Drogon. So it seems like that's Team Others, right? They're fighting at Hizdar's command. So I'm not sure if the pitmaster and the hero both represent, you know, a Night King, a lord of the frozen hell, but whatever happens, Dany, you know, she beats them all and takes the reins and flies the dragon. So that's pretty good foreshadowing. So after that is when Dany finds herself in the fiery hell, and the rest of those lines come that we read already. Dany faces down Drogon, mounts the dragon, flies away, and lots of people catch on fire. It's actually very similar to her Undying scene, where Drogon burnt the Undying, who represent the others, so that Dany could escape near possession and symbolic otherization. The slave masters in Meereen, Hizdar especially, are more subtly doing something similar by trying to co-opt Dany into their way of life and manipulating her. Best of all, when the slave masters and the other Meereenese in Daznak's pit burn, they get the same description as the burning Undying. First, here's the burning of the Undying line to refresh your memory. It says, "They danced as the flames consumed them. They staggered and writhed and spun and raised blazing hands on high, their fingers bright as torches." And then here is Dany recalling the burning people she saw while flying out of Daznak's pit. It says, "Below, she saw men whirling, wreathed in flame, hands up in the air as if caught in the throes of some mad dance." So really close here. Both of these descriptions match the descriptions of the whites catching on fire. Both the one we quoted last time where Jon burns one in Mormont's chamber, and also this one we didn't quote, where Bran sees a burning white outside of Bloodraven's cave. And it says, "Up above them, flaming figures were dancing in the snow. The whites," Bran realized. "Someone set the whites on fire." Summer was snarling and snapping as he danced around the closest, a great ruin of a man wreathed in swirling flame. So wreathed in flame and dancing, just like the burning Meereenese at Daznak's pit, just like the Undying. This is all very intentional symbolic language, in my opinion. And the purpose seems clear. It allows George to be able to place symbolic burning whites and symbolic others at scenes like Daznak's pit and the House of the Undying as a means of foreshadowing Dany's final encounter with the others and their whites. Makes sense, right? And again, this is a mirror to the House of the Undying, which once we pick up on the clues about the symbolic others and whites at Daznak's pit and understand that we're supposed to interpret this fiery hell scene at Daznak's as foreshadowing of an icy hell scene where Dany is being attacked by the others. That's obviously what's happening in the House of the Undying. And in both scenes, Dany is set upon by others who want to kill and possess her, and both times she escapes or triumphs with dragonfire. So, let me grab a drink here and take a quick pause, catch my breath. You guys following me so far? Picking up, you smelling what the Rock is cooking? I don't know if I should make cooking jokes since I'm already talking about us being myth heads. I got a comment this morning that was like, did he just say myth heads? It's like, no, myth heads. I guess I need to overpronounce that one when I make that joke. All right, so you guys may have noticed something else about that last Bran quote. It says, "Flaming figures were dancing in the snow," and then it describes summer dancing around a man wreathed in swirling flame. That sounds familiar. Where have you seen that before? Inside the tent, the shapes were dancing, circling the brazier and the bloody bath, dark against the sand silk, and some did not look human. She glimpsed the shadow of a great wolf, and another like a man wreathed in flames. Wow, what's going on here? So there's a great wolf and a man wreathed in flames dancing around in a circle. That's exactly like what Bran just saw. And again, just to read the Bran quote again, up above them, flaming figures were dancing in the snow. Summer was snarling and snapping as he danced around the closest, a great ruin of a man wreathed in swirling flame. So the shadow of a great wolf and a man wreathed in flames. It's the same shit, man. So what's that mean? Well, people have always wondered about this pair, the great wolf and the man wreathed in flames, that we glimpse inside Mirri Maz Duur's tent of dancing shadows. And some have wondered if this is supposed to maybe represent R'hllor and the great other, or something like that, just ice and fire, perhaps. Now, I happen to think that they both represent Jon, essentially, who will be both a great shadow wolf and a man made of fire if he's resurrected by Melisandre. Because the reason why I think this is that the magic ritual that Mirri uses to try to save Drogo seems like exactly the sort of skin changer resurrection ceremony that we would need to raise Jon. I've mentioned this before. This is one of my favorite little obscure theories. So check this out. Think about skin changer resurrection as you hear this quote. Mirri Maz Duur chanted words in a tongue that Dany did not know, and a knife appeared in her hand. Dany never saw where it came from. It looked old, hammered red bronze, leaf-shaped, its blade covered with ancient glyphs. The Magi drew it across the stallion's throat, under the noble head, and the horse screamed and shuddered as the blood poured out of him in a red rush. He would have collapsed, but the men of her cause held him up. Strength of the mount, go into the rider, Mirri sang as horse blood swirled into the waters of Drogo's bath. Strength of the beast, go into the man. So think about this. If Jon's spirit is stuck in Ghost for more than a few days, it will begin to merge with the wolf spirit. And the only way to get it out of the wolf body, probably, will be to sacrifice said wolf body, just as Mirri does with Drogo's horse. Then what we'd want is for the spirit of the wolf, which would actually be Jon and Ghost's merged spirit, to go back into the man, just as Mirri asks for the strength of the beast to go into the man. So in other words, I think we could easily see a parallel scene to this one play out with Jon's resurrection. Melisandre in the place of Mirri Maz Duur, Ghost in the place of Drogo's sacrificed stallion, and Jon in the place of Drogo. Hence, the man wreathed in flame and the great shadow wolf symbols. That represents essentially the merging of Jon's fiery spirit and Ghost's wolf spirit, perhaps. Now, the fact that Dany may be seeing this foreshadowing of Jon's resurrection in a tent where Drogo is dying and sort of kind of being saved with magic might indicate that Jon would become Dany's final husband or lover or partner, just like Drogo is. And of course, that would make sense. Or it may simply work to place Jon and Dany's major scenes in parallel and to indicate their importance to one another. It's kind of all the same thing. So, 1 second here. Got a little bit of a dry throat going on, so you might have to put up with the clanking of a lozenge for just a few minutes, guys. And let me take a look at the PayPal. Make sure I didn't miss anything there. I did. I got a 777. Oh, the number of divinity from Short Fuse. Thank you, Short Fuse. And of course, you can send in those donations at paypal.me/mythicalastronomy, and you can send a question in the comments field. And I like those because they stay in my email box. And then when I want to take a break and check the questions, I can flip over and they're all queued up for me. So it's a very good way to go. But hey, just showing up today is a good way to go. So thanks. And by the way, I do have my dragon and wolf shirt just to do the, Targaryen Stark symbolism here. So anyways. So Bran is seeing, so Dany sees these symbols in the Mirri Maz Duur tent of dancing shadows, right? Then we've got Bran. Like I said, he's on the other end of this symbolic parallel. He sees the burning dead man wreathed in flame and his wolf Summer dancing outside of Bloodraven's cave. So what does that mean? Well, Bran may well be involved in Jon's resurrection, first of all, even if Melisandre is doing a lot of the work. And I'd also expect Bran to be magically guiding or helping Jon and Dany as they do battle with the others in the far north. Now, Bran's going to come up later in this episode a little bit, and for the same reasons, he seems foreshadowed to help Dany and Jon fight the others. So he turns up in some of those scenes. For example, when Dany sleeps by the low stone wall and gets attacked by the ants, she sleeps next to an 8-sided well, which compares well to the Night Fort well, because the Night Fort well is inside of an 8-sided kitchen. And the Night Fort, of course, it's the home of the Night's King. It's where the others may have been created. And more importantly, it's a place where you can cross the wall. Just as Daenerys steps over the wall that's like the wall of Westeros, right next to an 8-sided well. So there you go. You got some Night Fort, Daenerys, parallels there. All right, now so Dany's hearing a wolf call in her last dance chapter, and right before stomping the ants that seem like others and crossing the wall. Jon has a parallel scene at the wall, suggesting that Jon should probably be accompanying Dany to fight the others. Dany's escape from Daznak's pit mirrors Jon's death scene, and again, has her burning others in whites in apparent foreshadowing of a final confrontation with the others. I mentioned the parallels between Daznak's and the burning of the other like Undying, so are there any clues about Jon in the Undying scene that might similarly imply that Jon should be with Dany when she faces the others? But of course there is. A blue flower grew from a chink in a wall of ice and filled the air with sweetness. Mother of dragons, bride of fire. So I think there's no question that this blue flower growing from a chink in a wall made of ice represents Jon. Blue winter roses are specifically and prominently associated with Lyanna, who is Jon's mother. Sorry, you truthers out there. It's according to RLJ, it's Jon's mother. And seeing such a blue winter rose blooming from a chink in the wall, well, that can only refer to Jon as Lyanna's child, sort of blooming, coming into his own as a man of the Night's Watch, defending the wall. Now, as to why Dany would see this vision, well, seemed to indicate the importance of Jon to Dany. And I'd also argue that it implies Dany will be with Jon at the wall when something important happens. Perhaps she and Jon might even have some sort of magical wedding type scene. And remember that can mean all types of things because we're talking about symbolism, alchemical weddings, all that kind of stuff. But the line, think about it, the line right after the bit about the blue flower growing in the wall of ice is Mother of Dragons, Bride of Fire. Jon will probably be powered by R'hllor by the time he meets Dany, so she'd be marrying the most fiery dude around, actually. Pretty cool, right? See a couple of super chats coming in from the gracious folks. Burn them all says, just want to thank you for continuing to nerd out on all of this. Your psychosis is appreciated. Right on. I'm glad. I'm happy to be doing this. I'm not forcing it. I'm happy to be doing this for a living. So yeah, this is great fun. Exploring symbolism in mythology and using A Song of Ice and Fire as a vehicle to do so. That's really what we're doing here. Daniel Meredith sending in another super sticker. This time, let me look at it. More blood coffee. Thank you. It's keeping me going. All right. Let's see here. Now, here's a question. Could Dany wedding Jon in some sense, be it magical or symbolic or literal or all three, might that be a key to defeating the others? Well, again, if we think about that in terms of partnership, it kind of does make sense. Jon and Dany will need to meet and kind of get on the same page regarding the dragons and the others and what needs to be done and much else. I think this will pretty much be the main attraction of A Dream of Spring, by the way, Jon and Dany. The thing that takes center stage. That means we're actually doing A Dream of Spring predictions today. Only a few years early. Ha, ha, ha. Ha, ha. Only a few years, because I'm sure A Dream of Spring will come out promptly after The Winds of Winter, which is coming out soon. Ha, 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 ha. Anyways, one of my favorite clues foreshadowing a union of Jon and Dany is the fact that their animal familiars resemble one another. And there's all kinds of symbolism that flows from that. This next part will also begin to take us into the topic of what it is that Jon and Dany need to do to defeat the others and free the whites. And this will also lead us back to the House of the Undying for an entirely new layer of symbolism that we didn't even touch on last time, because the House of the Undying is full of symbolism. So section break. How's everybody feeling? 2:12. We've been live for almost an hour. 380 people watching. Appreciate y'all here on this Starry Wisdom Sunday. Not watching football. It's kind of, games are kind of lame. My team's already destroyed. I drafted Saquon Barkley. He got hurt. Everyone else got hurt. So yeah, that's what is football anyways. Let me check my PayPal's here. Yep, someone, Greg Henderson. Oh, sorry, I was trying to keep the last names out of there. Greg H. 1111. I love all the 666, 777, 1111. Sure. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. Catherine sent a 666 with a question. Do you think that Quaid has been trying to send dreams messages to Jon as well, seeing as he has many prophetic dreams and is also connected to dragons? Or do you think he's being aided by Bloodraven? Is there a reason Quaid would not be interested in Jon? So I do think it's Bloodraven. And one of the clues about that is at the end of Jon's Azor Ahai dream where he's defending the wall, there's an old gnarled hand that grabs him on the shoulder and wakes him up from the dream. And the most sensible explanation for that is Bloodraven's presence in the dream. Gnarled is a word that's used to describe trees. Bloodraven's obviously very old. His hands really can't do much now, actually, but he's obviously manifesting in the dream. So I do think it's probably Jon, but I'm very interested in the larger topic of like the older wizard and witch people like Quaid and Marwyn, Makoro, Melisandre, Bloodraven, how they are all trying to interpret who is Azor Ahai. Some of them are looking at Jon, some at Dany. Some of them are thinking about both Jon and Dany. So that's going to be interesting to watch what all of those older masters, how they sort of start to decipher events and Dany's presence in Westeros. So I'm very interested in what Dany's going to do with glass candles, getting into contact with Quaid, maybe seeing more of a shy. I think that's a very promising line of plot. So I'm looking forward to that quite a bit. Let's see here. Dany already married Fire, though, when she goes into the fire pyre and she thinks, don't they see this as a wedding too? Absolutely. So that's the first scene that I labeled an alchemical wedding scene. And that scene has loads of foreshadowing. It's talking about original Long Night events with Azor and Nissa and the moon cracking. I do also think there's future foreshadowing going on there too. And so I think that basically you might see some sort of a replay of this alchemical wedding scene in the heart of winter. And I'm going to get to that a little bit later. So essentially, the fact that she already married Fire is a good thing. It's foreshadowing. So if she marries Jon as a Fire White, that would just be like another layer and another parallel of the idea of her being the bride of fire. That's what I would say about that. Uh, 4:20 is coming around in 4 minutes, and that will be 4:20 Central Time. So let's talk about the color symbolism. Like I said, Dany and Jon resemble each other's animal familiars. As some of you may have noticed, Jon dresses all in black. He's described as a black shadow. And of course, he's actually a secret dragon. Drogon, the winged shadow, is similarly black as night and is a dragon, although he's not a secret. Drogon is black with red markings, of course, and his black flame is shot through with red. And when Jon has his Azor Ahai dream, he's wielding a burning red sword, and he generally wields fire as a weapon, as all men of the Night's Watch do. So there's your red color. Now, Jon's animal familiar is Ghost, who's all white, or silver in the moonlight. And Dany's coloring is basically white and silver. All Valerians and Targaryens have extremely pale skin, and their hair is described as a mixture of silver, gold, and platinum white. Dany doesn't have red eyes like Ghost, but she does catch on fire from time to time. In fact, what we see is that Jon matches Drogon's darkness, Dany matches Ghost's paleness, and both animals are splashed with red. So black, white, and red, if you sort of lump silver and white together. And it is a cool parallel, but it's only getting started. Only getting started. So the mythical astronomy symbolism also lines up here. Drogon, as a fiery black dragon, is a prime symbol of both a moon meteor and as well as a dragon and a dragon sword. And as I said in my first ever podcast, comets, dragons, flaming swords, they're all interchangeable. They refer to one another. The Valyrian steel swords are symbols of the meteors and their dragon swords. The comets, the meteors are like dragons and flaming swords, on and on and on and on and on. You guys get that. Symbolism three-way. I laid it out on my first ever podcast. So hopefully you guys know the deal there. So Jon, basically, the point is Jon has the same symbolism as Drogon. All Night's Watchmen are called swords in the darkness. So that makes Jon a black sword with Valyrian blood. A Valyrian steel sword, in other words. A black dragon sword, ready to bring fire in the darkness. That's just like Drogon. Jon also fights with a black dragon sword. And in fact, the sword symbolizes Jon and Ghost together, right? The pommel is a pale stone shaped just like Ghost. And the blade is a black dragon blade, which is what Jon is. And I've even pointed out that the logical way to put the wolf's head pommel, and let me, where's my, oh gosh, where's Foamkeeper? I don't know. Foamkeeper's downstairs. Never mind. So the wolf head would be the pommel. It'd be at the bottom of the pommel, right? And the head would be like growling downwards. And the blade is going this way. So it's kind of, it looks like, if you hold the sword sideways, it would look like the wolf head has swallowed the blade. The black sword has gone through the wolf head and it's sort of coming out the other end, if you will. Jokes aside, that's what's going to happen, right? When Jon's spirit goes into Ghost, Ghost will be swallowing Jon. So literally the sword shows you what's going to happen. Jon the black sword swallowed by Ghost the white wolf. So here. So Jon is also very much like a moon meteor because his parents were Solar King Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna the Moon Maiden. And the child of sun and moon, of course, always the moon meteors. Just as all the children of Dany, the moon maiden, are dragons who symbolize moon meteors. Let's talk about Ghost now. Ghost, oh, it looks like it is 4:20 Central. One moment. Hold music. That little jingle I always hum is actually the Monty Python intermission music from the Holy Grail. By the way. All right. So let's talk about Ghost, right? Ghost, well, he symbolizes a weirwood tree. And this is one of the symbolisms that's flat out given to us by one of the main characters in the story. I mean, Jon actually compares Ghost to the weirwood coloring, blood and bone, and thinks this one belongs to the old gods. So is Dany a weirwood tree? Well, kinda, because all Nissa Nissa figures represent weirwood trees. That's the point of the weirwood stigmata symbolism. When someone gets the bloody hands, bloody eyes, bloody mouth, that makes them look like a weirwood tree. The idea is that Nissa Nissa was a child of the forest woman with a magical bond to the weirwood trees. And when she's sacrificed by Azor Ahai, she goes into the weirwood trees. And so we get all these Nissa Nissa figures manifesting the wounds that make them look like a weirwood tree. That's all in the Weirwood Goddess podcast series. And I've referred to those ideas a bunch of times. So hopefully you kind of roughly familiar with what I'm talking about there. Now, Dany, for example, she gets awesome weirwood stigmata when she eats the stallion's heart in Vaes Dothrak. We talked about that in the Weirwood Compendium 9 and 10 just a couple weeks ago. She gets, blood on her hands, blood on her mouth. And she's actually eating a heart, which makes you think of a heart tree, which drinks blood and, accepts human sacrifice. So both Dany and the weirwoods also have heavy lunar associations. And it's also not hard to see a white wolf as a moon symbol as well, such as in Jon's wolf dream from A Dance with Dragons, when it says, "The white wolf raced through a black wood, beneath a pale cliff as tall as the sky. The moon ran with him, slipping through a tangle of bare branches overhead, across the starry sky." So both the white wolf and the white moon are running through the branches of the trees here. And that's a nice as above, so below type of symbolism. So there you have it. That's the first layer. Drogon and Jon are basically identical moon meteor, black dragon, black sword symbols. And Dany and Ghost are both pale white weirwood symbols. So I'll just say it. When Dany mounts Drogon, that's potentially foreshadowing. And when Jon slips inside his wolf, that's also foreshadowing. So jokes aside, the Drogon, Jon, Dany Ghost symbolism parallels are a really cool way of showing us that Dany and Jon are destined to be bonded to one another, right? That's probably the easy way to say it. The animals they're already bonded with resemble their future destined mate, if you will. So, and again, every time I talk about Dany and Jon being mates and bond, all that stuff, I really think the emphasis here is on magical destiny. They may have a romance along the way, but the show really conceptualized the whole thing incorrectly by using it as a political wedge. The politics are going to go by the wayside pretty quick once Dany and Jon understand that the others are the main threat. So, the show did the whole move where Dany then goes back south and the politics come back up again. I don't think that's going to happen. I've said that many times. I think Dany's story is going to end in the north. And by the end of this episode, you're going to see even more evidence why I think that. So just as an aside, let's talk about Ygritte. I see you guys mentioning Ygritte in the chat here. Ygritte has the exact same coloring as Ghost, right? Pale skin with red kissed by fire hair. And of course, the weirwood, if the weirwood face is on the trunk, then the canopy is like its hair, kind of. So the weirwood is like a white face with red hair, right? So that's Ygritte. And of course, Ygritte is a terrific Nissa Nissa as a weirwood maiden symbol. Her name is literally Ygritte. Think of a magical rite performed with Yggdrasil, Odin's magical tree upon which the weirwoods are based. And here's one of my favorite Nissa Nissa goes into the weirwood net quotes with Ygritte. And this is when Jon dreams of Ygritte and him making love in front of Winterfell's heart tree. When the dreams took him, he found himself back home once more, splashing in the hot pools beneath a huge white weirwood that had his father's face. Ygritte was with him, laughing at him, shedding her skins till she was naked as her name day, trying to kiss him. But he couldn't, not with his father watching. He was the blood of Winterfell, a man of the Night's Watch. "I will not father a bastard," he told her. "I will not. I will not." "You know nothing, Jon Snow," she whispered, her skin dissolving into the hot water, the flesh beneath sloughing off her bones, until only skull and skeleton remained, and the pool bubbled thick and red. So Ygritte, the Nissa Nissa figure, she's dissolving into the weirwood tree, turning into blood and bone, just like the weirwood trees are always described as having, bone white and blood red. Blood and bone, the coloring of the weirwood, that's also the coloring of Ghost. So she's entering, you even see the green sea metaphor here, right? Because she's melting into a pond, and the pond is in front of the heart tree. So this is the weirwood net underworld conceived as a body of water. Nissa Nissa is literally melting into it. This is just like Dany wandering around the Dothraki Sea after marrying Drogo. So there you have it. It's always Nissa Nissa going into the green sea after some sort of wedding, death transformation symbolic scene. Another cool parallel between Ygritte and Dany is that Ygritte's hair, of course, kissed by fire. Dany's hair literally catches on fire, both in Drogo's pyre and at Daznak's pit. Of course, the whole point of a Nissa Nissa figure having red hair or burning hair is to make them better resemble a weirwood tree with its canopy of blood red leaves that also look to be a blaze of flame when the sun hits them. So look, I'm pretty sure all the stuff about Nissa Nissa going into the weirwood net is first and foremost speaking of the past. Nissa Nissa's connection to the weirwoods was the reason why Azor Ahai was able to use her for a blood magic rite that somehow gained him access to the magic of the weirwoods. That's my theory. But what about the future? What about Dany? Dany acts out the original sequence of Nissa Nissa merging with the green sea of the weirwood net many times. But is there also something having to do with weirwoods in her future? Well, my friends, it's time to go back to the House of the Undying. And I'm also at a section break, so I will pause and say hi to the chat. Hello, chat. Hello. How you doing? And guys, I know every time I talk about ghosts getting sacrificed, everyone gets really sad. I just want to emphasize that it's only ghosts, mortal, wolf flesh that will die. I truly expect, I'm 100% certain, 99% certain, if you will, high degree of confidence, Jon's spirit and Ghost's spirit will become one. And the thing that goes back into Jon's body will be both spirits. You know, that's the whole point of naming Ghost. Like Jon's ghost is his wolf. They will become one and the same. And that will make Jon the wolf man. He will have Ghost inside of him and Jon inside of him. And that's going to be pretty, like, you know, terrifying. And it will still be sad. But I have also pointed out many times that Jon is a big Mithras parallel. And Mithras has an animal familiar that is a white bull. And one of the things that Mithras does, and again, Mithras is highly symbolic, but he sacrifices the white bull in order to be reborn. And this also floods the world with blood and transforms the world as well. And the white bull is a friend of Mithras and even in some sense a part of Mithras, and yet he must sacrifice it to become reborn. And Jon, you know, Ghost is the obvious white bull parallel. So for Ghost to be sacrificed when Jon is reborn makes a ton of sense. And at Jon's birth at the Tower of Joy, one of the Kingsguard who died was Sir Gerald Hightower, whose nickname is the White Bull. So white bulls are slain when Jon is born, probably be slain when Jon is reborn if we understand that Ghost will be the white bull. So hate to be the bearer of bad news, but again, Ghost's spirit will live on. And isn't that really what's important, guys? It's not the flesh, it's the spirit. Anyways, I see Daniel Meredith with a super chat. Can you tell us anything about the house with the red door with a lemon tree outside? It's apparently happened before she came to Pentos with Viserys. So nope, not going into that. The house with the red door is in Braavos. There are fruit trees in the gardens of the mighty. So even though there's not plants and trees in Braavos, the wealthy have gardens with fruit trees. We've seen that. So I don't believe there's any conspiracy there. I don't believe Dany was raised in Dorne. Dany is who she's supposed to be. This is not your home for those sort of alternate parentage theories for Dany and Jon. I do respect those of you who like those theories. I have no ill will. I just don't think they're right, and so I don't feel free to talk about them a lot. But that's all I'll say about that. There are other places on the internet where you can get filled in on why I'm wrong. So you have to check that out. Yes. So where was I? Yes, I was checking my email notifications to see about PayPal's, of which there are more. June sent $10 without a question. Just a donation. Thank you. Cassius, same thing. Thanks, June and Cassius. So Jon won't be a werewolf. Adam Wooford. Wooford. He won't be a werewolf, but he will be like the wolf man, as far as like, you know, if you just think about the archetype of the wolf man, which includes werewolves and Teen Wolf, Michael J. Fox, and things like that. He will be the wolf man, quote unquote. I don't think he'll be able to shift back and forth or anything weird like that, but he might still have access to skin changer magic and be able to control other animals potentially. I do think that's a possibility. Hey, happy birthday. Elisa's here. Taken out. She went on a birthday outing. She's here. You haven't missed too much. In fact, we're right about to go into some cool, actually, yeah, I mean, you missed half of it, I guess, but there's still a lot of cool stuff left to come, Elisa. So, and we did wish you a happy birthday earlier. So guys, last time we talked about the Undying Ones standing in for the others with their blue corrupt heart representing the heart of winter. Well, the thing is, we totally ignored the creepy, weird shade of the evening trees. And now we got to talk about them. Pretty much everyone has noticed that the shade of the evening trees seem very similar to the weirwood trees, only they're inverted in color scheme, right? Black bark instead of white, blue leaves instead of red, but they both produce psychedelic sorcerous concoctions. Now, the description of Dany and Bran drinking and eating those concoctions, Shade of the Evening and Weirwood Paste, respectively, are strikingly similar. The whole paragraphs are very similar. I'm not going to read them, but most people know this already. It's just, the taste change. They don't taste good at first and then taste really good by the end. And it's compared to like all these wild things. And anyways, there's even weird little gnome dwarves at the House of the Undying, which would seem like a parallel to the Children of the Forest. So let's start off with this quote where Dany enters the Temple of the Undying. It says, "When they reached the door, a tall oval mouth set in a wall fashioned in the likeness of a human face. The smallest dwarf Dany had ever seen was waiting on the threshold. He stood no higher than her knee, his face pinched and pointed, snoutish, but he was dressed in delicate livery of purple and blue, and his tiny pink hands held a silver tray. Upon it rested a slender crystal glass filled with a thick blue liquid, Shade of the Evening, the wine of the warlocks." So this seems like a very obvious parallel to the Black Gate, right? The giant weirwood mouth that allows men of the Night's Watch to pass from one side of the wall to the other. There's your freaky little gnome dwarf, like I said. And of course, we know that as soon as he serves Dany this drink, he has to run inside and put on a different costume so he can play one of the dwarves, biting the woman who represents Westeros. It's busy work for a gnome. Kidding aside, the parallels are easy to see, right? Like I said, the colors are inverted, and everything at the House of the Undying reeks of corruption and toxicity. That's the difference, right? So let's look at the description of the House of the Undying as Dany approaches it in A Clash of Kings. "Long and low, without towers or windows, it coiled like a stone serpent through a grove of black-barked trees, whose inky blue leaves made the stuff of the sorcerer's drink, the Carthene called Shade of the Evening. No other building stood near. Black tiles covered the palace roof, many fallen or broken. The mortar between the stones was dry and crumbling. She understood now why Zarzo and Daxos had called it the Palace of Dust. Even Drogon seemed disquieted by the sight of it. The black dragon hissed, smoke seeping out between his sharp teeth. Blood of my blood, Drogo said in Dothraki. This is an evil place, a haunt of ghosts and magi. See how it drinks the morning sun? Let us go before it drinks us as well." So the theme of this place is clearly darkness. It's called Shade of the Evening. The building seems to drink the morning sunlight. That's in direct opposition to the weirwoods, whose bark is as white as snow or bone, which are both gleaming white, and whose leaves can appear to be on fire. And of course, we know that in A Song of Ice and Fire, the weirwood is symbolically a burning tree which conveys the fire of the gods to the greenseers who use its magic. Fire creates light, of course, but the dark blue leaves of the shade trees are inky, which makes us think of clouds of squid ink, especially since Euron is linked to the warlocks. The building being like a coiling stone serpent is interesting. A stone serpent is an obvious meteor symbol, and the drinking of the morning sun language reminds us of the oily black stone, which is said to drink the light. And of course, we find that oily stone at Ashai, Yeen, the Isle of Toads, Seastone Chair, and maybe at Moat Cailin. The oily black stone is very possibly connected to meteor impacts, if meteor impacts occurred, which I think they did. We find the most oily black stone at Ashai, and there's also a magical disaster zone there. So to me, this is probably ground zero for the Long Night impact. And I think all the oily black stone is essentially stone that was burnt when the meteor crashed, because that's what happens. When meteors land, they push waves of superheated air over 1,000 degrees hot in front of them, and it vaporizes all the rock, and it fuses together and forms all kinds of cool stuff. And that's where I think the oily stone comes from. So point is, coiling stone serpent that drinks the light. This sounds like oily stone, and it sounds like a meteor. So what does this mean? The symbolic others live inside of this thing, right? So I guess you can cue up your "the others came from space" theories. That's why they have star eyes, man. They're visitors from space. Now, more likely, I would say that what this is referring to is the idea that the moon meteors caused the long night, the shade of the long evening, and also the related idea that Azor Ahai, the shady stone serpent, if you will, created the others, as I've talked about in my recent videos about the others. Azor Ahai created the others in theory by invading and corrupting the weirwoods, right? This is the idea that the others are in some sense evicted tree spirits of the weirwoods. And this is, guys, this is really what the House of the Undying symbolism is all about. It's telling us the story of the others and of the corruption of the weirwoods. So let me put it this way, right? The shade of the evening trees and all the other various blackwood, like the ebony or the ironwood trees, they all represent corrupted weirwoods. Now, I don't know that the shade of the evening trees are literally transformed weirwood trees. They might be. But that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about symbolism. In terms of symbolism, they definitely represent corrupted weirwood trees. That's the reason for the inversion of color and all the language about corruption and rottenness that's used to describe the shade drink, the temple, and the Undying ones themselves. So one of the biggest clues about this blackwood, poisoned weirwood symbol is House Blackwood. Blackwood. They have a huge weirwood tree, but it's dying, and it was supposedly poisoned. So we've got a poisoned and dying weirwood tree and a house named Blackwood. There you go. And then here are these shade trees with black wood, and I'm saying they symbolize a portion of the weirwood net, which has been poisoned and corrupted. And what do we find in the inner sanctum of this house of poisoned weirwood? Symbolic others. That's right. So think about the corrupt blue heart in the Undying One's audience chamber. I mentioned that it seems like a good symbol for the heart of winter. Well, if we're thinking about the shade trees as corrupt weirwoods, well, this makes us think about heart trees, right? Instead of, the weirwoods are bleeding with red blood and they're called heart trees. And here we have a blue heart and corrupted weirwood tree symbols. So it kind of all makes sense, right? We should think about a blue, corrupted and frozen heart tree, because again, the heart is cold. The Undying Ones are cold shadows. So it's blue, cold, and corrupt. That's the vibe here. So let's break from the Undying Ones chapter, and I want to show you a passage from Dance with Dragons that depicts a frozen weirwood tree becoming an other. Outside, the night was white as death. Pale thin clouds danced attendance on a silver moon, while 1,000 stars watched coldly. He could see the hump shapes of other huts buried beneath drifts of snow, and beyond them, the pale shadow of a weirwood armored in ice. So think about this. I quote this one a lot. The others are called pale shadows many times, and the others are also literally armored in ice, right? They wear ice armor. And then here's a weirwood, which is a pale shadow armored in ice. So it's got two other descriptions, and it's a frozen weirwood tree. And then if you look at the other lines in this passage, they're also painting a picture of the others in the sky. There's pale, thin clouds dancing attendance on a silver moon, but the others are pale and thin beings who can be like mist, like a cloud, and who dance with Sir Waymar in the moonlight. And through those clouds, there's 1,000 stars watching coldly. And of course, cold star eyes are what we find atop the pale, thin bodies of the others. So you see these pale, thin clouds and the cold star eyes in the sky, and then you see a frozen weirwood armored in ice on the ground. So again, it's an as above, so below thing. We're seeing the others in the sky, and we're seeing the others on the ground in this weirwood tree. And the message of all this seems clear to me. The freezing of the weirwoods is part of the creation of the others. When a weirwood tree is frozen, it literally looks like an other. So Varamir Sixskins, that's where this chapter comes from. It's his prologue. He's only a few sentences away right here from invading Thistle's body. And of course, that's one of the primary weirwood stigmata scenes, right? A Thistle is a Nissa Nissa. Varamir is, evil Azor Ahai. He invades her, and then she gets the weirwood stigmata. She gets a bloody mouth. She bites off her tongue. She gets a carved face. She claws at her face. She has bloody eyes. She gets bloody hair. And even the silent symbolism of the weirwoods is there because she bites off her own tongue. And then when Varamir gets bounced out of her body, he bounces right into that frozen weirwood. So it's showing you the thistle is analogous to the weirwood. She turns into a weirwood, and Varamir goes from her into the frozen weirwood. So this is a great depiction of Azor Ahai killing Nissa Nissa, invading the weirwoods, and by doing so, corrupting them, freezing them, and driving the tree spirits out. Tree spirits which become the others. So that is the picture that the House of the Undying is painting. It's essentially showing us that the others come from a poisoned side of the weirwoods. And the idea that the weirwood net should be divided in half is basically written everywhere. For example, consider the weirwood and ebony doors on the House of Black and White. The inside of the House of Black and White is definitely symbolizing the weirwood net. If you remember, the kindly old man has a worm in one of his eyes when he appears as a skull face. It's just like Bloodraven with a root in one of his eyes that looks like a worm. And it goes on and on and on and on. So we covered that one in Weirwood Goddess. It's an Arya thing if you want. But the question is, why would the moon face on the doors be divided half ebony and half weirwood? Why wouldn't it just be weirwood? It's indicating that there's some sort of duality to this weirwood net, astral plane, afterlife realm, which is what the House of the Undying is. It's the realm of the dead, right? Literally, the dead go in there, and the keepers of the dead are who live there. So it's definitely the realm of the dead. The doors are half black and white. Then there's Tobomat's Forge in King's Landing. It's got doors of ebony and weirwood also. I don't have time to get into the symbolism of Tobomat's Forge, but it fits. Trust me, take my word for it. Most importantly, the doors to the final room in the House of the Undying, before the actual audience chamber, has ebony and weirwood doors as well. It says, finally the stair opened. To her right, a set of wide wooden doors had been thrown open. They were fashioned of ebony and weirwood, the black and white grains swirling and twisting in strange interwoven patterns. They were very beautiful, yet somehow frightening. So I'm tempted to speculate here that the interwoven nature of the black and white speaks to the time before the fall, when the weirwood net was not partitioned and not corrupted. If only because the vision of themselves that the Undying present behind those doors is all glorious and immaculate, right? Everyone looks beautiful. They're studded with gemstones. There's lovely music playing. It seems like an Edenic kind of setting. But setting aside the interwoven part, the bigger point here is the pattern. Weirwood is consistently paired with black wood, and at places that symbolize something about the weirwood net. And this encourages us to think of the shade of the evening trees as some sort of important opposite companion to the weirwoods, that they represent two halves of a whole on some level. And clearly, the shady, corrupted side seems connected to the others, judging by the House of the Undying. So what do we make of Dany charging into this grove of symbolic corrupted weirwoods, only to find the others, their heart of winter, and then decree a good old-fashioned Dracarys onto all of it? Well, I think this is an unmistakable clue that whatever Dany and Jon will be doing in the heart of winter, it's got to involve weirwoods, right? If frozen weirwoods and corrupted weirwoods are basically the same thing, then it seems like a bit of cleansing dragon fire might be in order, right? Because dragon fire can melt and it can also cleanse. So remember how Dany saw a vision of the freed slaves raising 10,000 blood-stained hands, reaching and crying out for Dany when she's near the end of these Undying visions? Remember how I said that those represent the whites calling out to her for freedom because the whites also have bloody hands? And because the Unsullied, who are a group of slaves that Dany freed, also symbolize the whites? Well, 1,000 blood-stained hands is also the exact description of the first weirwood that we see in A Game of Thrones, the Winterfell Heart Tree. So think about that and listen to this passage again. 10,000 slaves lifted blood-stained hands as she raced by on her silver, riding like the wind. Mother, they cried, mother, mother. They were reaching for her, touching her, tugging at her cloak, the hem of her skirt, on and on and on. They wanted her, needed her, the fire, the life, and Dany gasped and opened her arms to give herself to them. So Dany's basically like falling into a weirwood canopy here. She's like giving herself to the weirwood tree in order to liberate those who are enslaved. And she does this right before Drogon burns the corrupt Blue Heart and the Undying. So I think we can read this as a clue that Dany is going to cleanse the weirwoods with fire as a means of freeing the whites and ending the threat of the others. Judging by the symbolism here, it seems like she could do this either by going to the frozen and corrupted weirwoods that I speculate to be in the heart of winter, or maybe even inside the weirwood net itself. Think about it. Going inside the House of the Undying, which is already inside the grove of shade trees, kind of seems like going inside the weirwood net language, right? And so too for Dany escaping from a symbolic fight against the others at Daznak's pit, only to go inside the Great Grass Sea with Drogon. This too could be foreshadowing a trip inside the weirwood net. Dany's going to go to the Mother of Mountains and do some sort of important symbolism involving her taking control of the Dothraki, of course. And I'd expect those scenes to mirror her scenes taking control of the Unsullied and the burning of the Undying. Because after all, aren't there a few calls ripe for symbolic other burning? How about Khal Draco, who raped Aroa and gave her to his men at the end of A Game of Thrones? It was a cruel fate, Dany said, yet not so cruel as Maegor's will be. I promise you that. By the old gods and the new, by the lamb god and the horse god and every god that lives. I swear it by the Mother of Mountains and the womb of the world. Before I am done with them, Maegor and Khal Draco will plead for the mercy they showed Aroa. The Dothraki exchanged uncertain glances. Khaleesi, the handmaid Eerie explained, as if to a child. Draco is Khal now, with 20,000 riders at his back. She lifted her head. And I am Daenerys Stormborn, Daenerys of House Targaryen, of the blood of Aegon the Conqueror, and Maegor the Cruel, and old Valyria before them. I am the dragon's daughter, and I swear to you, these men will die screaming. So, yeah, I think Dany might be burning a few khals, given that it was Khal Draco, whose Khalasar she meets in the Dothraki Sea with Drogon at her side. So this will be yet another scene of Dany burning symbolic others and liberating perhaps, the slaves of the Dothraki, or you could even say liberating the Dothraki themselves, because she will be upending their social order. There's the bit about the crones, coming out of the womb of the world. I don't want to get too far into speculating what's going to happen there. But what is going to happen is something along the lines symbolically of what we're talking about. So, people who just comment, she is mad with no argument, are getting removed from my channel. You will never again comment on my channel. I don't appreciate thoughtless trolling like that. And that's how I respond. Just, you guys can see anytime I see a comment like that, that's like, I don't respond. I just ban you from my channel. And that's that. So see you later. What can I say? We're here to have intelligent conversation, or at least decent conversation. And if you're not making a point, that's not conversation. I feel like I'm making a lot of points, and I feel like my assertions are backed up by reason. So, there you go. I'm always open to people disagreeing with me, but, come with something, come with an argument. I find that people who hate Dany and think that she's going to go mad just like the show, they never have good arguments, and they don't even have arguments at all. In fact, that's what I found. They basically just, it's a bunch of blah, 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 blah stuff. So, until y'all come with something better, that's how I'm going to talk about you, Dany Antis, because you're thoughtless. You don't bring good arguments. You just troll. And so there you go. Yeah, don't get me started. I think I just did get started. Well, let's stop me then. So there you go. A few more things. Dany is headed to the heart of winter. She's inside of this grove of corrupt weirwood trees. She's burning things. She's sitting on fire. She's liberating the slaves via the dream. Jon is appearing there with her via the blue rose in the chink in the wall vision that she has. So you can really see a lot of the picture here. But here's the interesting thing, right? Dany doesn't just give herself to the weirwood canopy here, and that's the end of the story. Like, she goes inside the weirwood, she gives herself to the weirwood or the whites, or however you want to see that. And then what happens next? Then she burns the Undying and escapes. So what she does is she's like, in a lot of these scenes, she's taking control of the symbolic whites, right? Like in Astapor, when she frees the Unsullied, she does free the Unsullied because she gives them the choice to go their own way. They don't have to fight for her, right? But they pretty much all do fight for her. So effectively, Dany has taken control of the White Army, which she then like leads around. So at first I was kind of wondering about that. I was like, well, is Dany gonna turn evil and lead the whites against Westeros? But no, what this is actually talking about is essentially leading the whites to the afterlife, leading them to the realm of the dead. So Dany essentially is playing a psychopomp figure here. When she's coming and bringing fire, cleansing and destroying, she's essentially like an avatar of the many-faced god. She is a death goddess. She is Kali. And I still need to do my episode with all the Kali symbolism that hovers around Dany and Miriam's door. But the point is, this is a good destruction, is a cleansing fire. I talked about Dany as a cleansing fire for years. So that's what we're going to see. We're going to see Dany sacrificing herself, but also achieving quite a bit. And the emphasis here, like I said, is on leading the souls, the trapped souls of the whites into the afterlife so that they can know peace and find rest. And one of my patrons, let me flip over to my Twitter messages here. One of my patrons, actually, I can't remember. I'm sorry. I totally apologize. I can never remember who's a patron and who's just a good Twitter friend. But somebody by the name of Amethyst Starborn on Twitter, at Amethyst Starborn, has been in my ear about some cool research about the Celtic goddess Brigitte. So she is a fire goddess. She's also a psychopomp goddess of the dead figure who has something with escorting souls into the afterlife. There's a lot of parallels with Dany and Brigitte. I need to do more research before I can present the ideas in a coherent fashion. But some of you guys who know your Celtic mythology might know where that's going. And again, the important thing seems to be that Brigitte again helps souls find the afterlife and find peace. So I think that's definitely where Dany's going with this. So it's a really powerful thing that Jon and Dany will be doing. It's got something to do with cleansing the weirwood net, right? So let's go ahead, and I'm off my script now. I'm just freelancing. But if you guys have seen my King Bran series, which I highly recommend, if you're new to the channel and you're not sure like where to go next, you watched a couple of videos, make sure you watch the 3 King Bran scripted videos, because I think that's some of the most important symbolism that I've found. And the main thing about Bran and the weirwood net is that green seers aren't supposed to be inside the weirwoods. That's what I think. All this time when I'm talking about Azor Ahai invading the weirwoods through blood sacrifice, forcing his way in, causing all this trouble, that to me is the root of the problem. And if the others are in some sense the spirits of the weirwoods who got pushed out when Azor Ahai invaded and corrupted the weirwood net, and again, that's what the Undying symbolism seems to show, then one second. Let me just catch my train of thought again. Okay, so the point is, human green seers, starting with Azor Ahai, have invaded the weirwood nets. If we're going to cleanse the weirwood net and appease the others, we've got to get the human green seers out of the weirwood net, right? So this is why I think we're going to have a download scenario where that green seer hive mind that Bloodraven is a part of and all the green seers are a part of, I think that thing is going to get downloaded into Bran's little noggin. And that is going to make him essentially the last green seer. And I think that his kingship will largely be about establishing a written record of history and taking all that knowledge and helping Westeros advance and stuff like that. But the main point I want to make here is that we got to get the green seer hive mind out of the weirwoods. It's not supposed to be in there. So think about this, right? A zombie, a white or a zombie, is basically a body whose consciousness has been hollowed out and something else is controlling them, especially in A Song of Ice and Fire. The others, or whatever intelligence moves the others, is animating the whites and making them do strategic things that serve the others' purposes. So now think about the weirwood trees as white trees. There's even a village called White Tree, but not W-H-I-T-E white. Think W-I-G-H-T white trees. And that's more Celtic mythology, by the way, the idea of zombies that are tied to trees. And so if the weirwoods are white trees, you just look at the weirwood tree and think about it as a zombie, right? It looks dead. It's blood and bone. So it looks like a face with no flesh. And it's got burning, bleeding hair and bloody hands. It's basically like a dying, burning person. And it's a white tree. So what that implies is that the tree brain isn't even in there anymore. It's the green seers, the human green seers that are like parasites inside the host body of the weirwoods. And that's what's going on. That's why the weirwoods look like they're screaming and crying and stuff. Like, they are an abomination. And a big clue about this is that when, Varamir invades Thistle, that's a weirwood stigmata scene, Azor Ahai invading Nissa Nissa and the weirwood net. And that's referred to as abomination over and over and over, the whole chapter. Varamir's thinking, stealing the flesh of another person is the worst abomination of all. Abomination, abomination. So yes, Azor Ahai killing Nissa Nissa, forcing his way into the weirwood net. It's the original abomination. And so to fix that, again, the green seer hive mind got to get out of the weirwood trees. It's going to go into Bran. Dany and Jon are going to be there, setting fire to icy weirwood trees, or burning the others, or going inside the weirwood net and doing some version of that. But you can see how the teamwork starts to emerge, right? Dany and Jon are going to help push, like cleanse the weirwood net. And then that weirwood net hive mind needs somewhere to go. It's going to go into Bran. Or maybe it goes into Bran first. And that allows Jon and Dany to do what they need to do. So I can't tell you exactly what Jon and Dany are going to do, but I can tell you that it's going to involve fixing those corrupted weirwoods, going to the heart of winter, freeing the whites, melting the others, and probably going inside the astral plane, I would think. So that's what this journey to the heart of winter is going to look like, friends. And I hope you hope that was fun for you guys. Like I said, a dream of spring predictions. Let's see. Elisa's asking, so what do you think the logistics of Dany's sacrifice will be? Hard to say. It could be that when her physical body dies, her spirit then is doing something on the astral plane, and that's where the story will finish. There's also the possibility that Dany could be resurrected. Any sort of Dany resurrection will have a healthy dose of fire, I would think. Oh, let me check the PayPal questions after I get the super chat from Daniel Meredith. So the heart of winter and the Shadowlands are the two hinges of the world. They are connected somehow to the others. Yes, totally agree. There might be other hinges of the world, but the heart of winter and the heart of shadow, absolutely polar opposites. One has to do with fire and shadow. The other one, the heart of winter, has to do with, it's all brightness, and there's the curtain of light that surrounds it. So even color-wise, they're inverted and opposite. And Melisandre, I've said she parallels Night's Queen a bunch of times, right? Well, Melisandre comes from Ashai in the heart of shadow. Night's Queen comes from lands north of the wall. So they're great opposites. And yeah. Now, as far as the mechanics of what Dany's going to do, like I said, I can really only interpret the symbolism. I'm not sure how exactly it's going to work. So that's, if I were to speculate there, I'm pretty much just, making tinfoil and stuff. I don't like to do that. So I will present you with that symbolism, and you can see, like I said, a lot of different ways that it could play out. But I definitely see Jon and Dany flying north on the dragon. And, oh, here's a good point. So if Alysanne on Silverwing was unable to fly over the wall, there's two possibilities. One, the dragon flat out could not cross the wall. The magical barrier also affects dragons. Other possibility is just it's very cold and magical, and the dragon doesn't like it, and sort of just shied away And maybe if the need was urgent, it would do it. But what I think is that the wall will fall, the long night will fall, the others will invade, and it will only be after that that Jon and Dany would then take a trip into the heart of winter. So the wall will already be broken by the time they cross it. That's just a little tidbit I'd throw out there. So basically restarting the internet to get rid of the virus. Haha, kind of, yeah. Is there any other white trees in other places, or is it only Westeros? Yeah, we haven't seen weirwoods anywhere else. We've definitely seen children of the forest. There's Ithakevron. So there could be weirwoods in other places, but we have not seen them elsewhere. So that is that. Does the Isle of Faces have an opposite counterpart location? Yes, the Isle of Lang. The Isle of Lang seems to be a parallel to the Isle of Faces. The old ones live on Lang. The old ones also live on the Isle of Faces. They're both magical islands that you can't really get to. Isle of Faces is magically warded. Isle of Lang, they'll kill you if you come there sometimes. So yeah, that's the parallel. Over to the PayPal questions in the email. Let's do that. Andrea, thank you, 666. YouTube has made your payment pending for security reasons. I don't know what's going on there, Andrea, but it should be fine. Let's see here. Cassius with a little thank you. Oh, here's one. Oh gosh. This name is so long. I'm not going to try to say it. I would butcher it horribly, but it's a 6-6 super chat. And the question is, loving the stream. I read somewhere that George said something along the lines of dragon riding being the opposite of skin changing. Makes even more sense considering the inverse nature of the relationship between Jon and Dany and their respective pets. So I'm not familiar with that quote. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think he said that they're different, that they're not necessarily the same thing. But he was kind of vague and elusive. And the quote I remember about that kind of makes you wonder if there is a connection between skin changing and dragon riding, and that he's trying not to reveal like something there. But I'm not really sure about that. But they are at least, similar in the sense that both Jon and Dany have magical bonds with their animals. So. Let's see. Oh, did I? Let's see here. Hang on. Did somebody send me a question about Silverwing that I missed? I'm not seeing it. Oh, okay. Shockweed, if I answered your question, no worries. If I didn't, then tag me and repeat it in the chat there, and I'll get you. Yeah, no worries, Andrea. It's just a random paid pal thing. I probably just have to click review and it'll go through, so don't sweat it. Let's see. And no, if you guys could, actually, Hypatia is asking me, no, if you could refrain from sharing links in the chat, that'd be great. That particular link, anyways. Do you think the fact that water is near every weirwood is important to the magic system? Do you think it is linked to the drowned god, water wizards of the Rhoyne? No, but I think it's important for symbolism because it works to tell that whole green sea side of the symbolism. I don't know that the water is necessarily important to the weirwoods, but maybe it is. Of course, the word weir refers to a fishing weir, which is like a dam that regulates the flow of water. So it does make sense to have the weirwoods by the water, just in terms of conceptually what they are. But let's see. Let's see here. And oh, there's another one from David, 1420. Appreciate that. Nice. Thanks, guys. You guys are sending in lots of PayPals today. Really appreciate that. So hopefully that material made sense. It's definitely advanced stuff. I'm standing on the backs of several other lines of exploration and trying to sort of add it together and show you how it goes. But the main thing to take away from this, guys, is that Jon and Dany have parallel scenes. Jon and Dany both have lots of foreshadowing, showing them heading north to fight the others. Jon and Dany's animal familiars show that they're destined to be bonded with one another. And when we go into the House of the Undying, which is the most clear foreshadowing of Dany fighting the others, or one of them, the whole thing happens inside a grove of black, undying shade trees, which, like I said, seem to represent corrupted weirwoods. So you can run with that any way you want. But the bottom line is that we can see that the corruption of the weirwoods is tied to the existence of the others. That is where they come from. And so when Dany goes in and burns that blue heart and burns the Undying and burns their whole temple, it definitely makes us think that Dany's got to do something with the weirwoods in order to free those whites. And the fact that the bloody hands in the vision represent both the whites and the weirwood tree, it tells you that Dany giving herself to the weirwood tree has a lot to do with freeing the whites. And that'll, again, be a great echo of the original Nissa Nissa, who has a connection to the weirwood net and went inside of the weirwood net when she was killed by Azor Ahai. So there you go, friends. And all you people that always complain about how I start with 7 minutes of bullshit, better not complain this time, because I went right into my script. Right in, right at the way. You don't have to leave a comment. It actually starts at 7:36, which, fair. Okay, fair. I'm trying to get better, but there you go. Went right into it today. So Elisa, the only way that I could see Jon stabbing Dany is if it's some sort of way of freeing her from a magical bondage. What if she's, because look at this, like she's almost possessed by the Undying, and then Drogon comes and burns everything away. So what if Dany is temporarily ensorcelled by the others or something, and some sort of sword, flaming sword thing, would free her soul somehow. But I really, like if she's whited, exactly. I still don't think that makes much sense, just because of the whole idea that Azor Ahai killing Nissa Nissa actually was the cause of the long night. To me, it just doesn't make sense to echo that exact thing to fix the long night, but I don't want to rule anything out. George is very creative, and sometimes when things happen symbolically, it doesn't carry the same emotional weight as it does if it happens literally. So hopefully the only stabbing of Dany that Jon will do will be sexual kind. That would be much better. So I will go ahead and throw out last call for questions. My voice is a little dry today, and I want to wrap this up, keep it nice and snappy. Like I said, I will be doing a Dany Q&A sometime this week. I don't know when it will be, because I've got various other things I got to do this week. But follow me on Twitter at @TheDragonLML. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And like we talked about earlier, you got to do the triple click subscribe, click the notification bell, and then click all notifications. And then you won't miss a notification. So Tracy, the Patreon questions I'm going to save for the Dany Q&A because I expect them to be essentially all over the mat. And I also want to give people, the patrons, a chance to process all this mumbo jumbo that I just said, and then add in. So the Patreon questions will be first on the Q&A coming this week. And if you want to follow Elisa for her birthday, she is at Elisa Patience, right? It's just your name, correct? Yep, at Elisa Patience. Always make your Twitter handle your name, folks. Mr. Mulders with a super chat. Will Dany trade a dragon with the others to free the whites as a parallel to how she set free the Unsullied? Or is Jon the symbolic dragon she will trade to stop the others from making whites? Oh, that's a good question. So let's think about that. She gives Drogon to the Unsullied, but then Drogon, or to the masters of the Unsullied, but then Drogon turns around and burns them. So how do we interpret that? Is that like a temporary bondage? And then Oh yes, I'm sorry. I should mention that Elisa Patience also has a YouTube channel with a very good Jon Snow White video that actually sort of complements some of this research. So Elisa, drop your link in the chat. In any case, so yeah, it could be. So I do expect the others to get one of, or at least I expect Euron to get Viserion. And since Euron could become a Night King figure, that could end up being like a whited Viserion, like on the show. That could happen, absolutely. So perhaps that's what we're talking about when we see the slave masters, you know, have one of Dany's dragons temporarily and then have it turned against them. It could be now, Jon. That is an interesting angle because I've got Jon Night King videos planned, and there's two ways Jon could become a Night King. One, the others could steal his body, like soon, like now that he's laying dead at the wall, they could literally show up and steal his body. Or at the very end of the story, perhaps Jon and Dany are doing a similar thing where they're becoming frozen or becoming leaders of the others and the whites in order to lead them back into the trees, in order to lead them away from Westeros, to lead them to the afterlife, help them find peace, whatever. So there is some potential for Jon Snow to become a Night King in order to lead the others away, essentially. That could happen. And it could happen with both Jon and Dany. They could end up Night King and Queen, to be honest, but not as villains, as people who then like give themselves to the others and lead the others away and pacify them. So that would be interestingly bittersweet, very magical, and very interesting. And it would agree with a lot of the foreshadowing. So definitely could see a scenario like that. Great question. Great question. In fact, I wanted to get to that thought, but sort of lost it in the script. So thanks a lot for bringing that up. Another point I wanted to make, I forgot to put in the script. So I mentioned that, so Jon's at the wall, right? And he sees the icy banners of the haunted forest and he's thinking about the others. And I pointed out, this is parallel to Dany's A Dance with Dragons scene where she sees ghostly banners and then crosses over the wall of Westeros, or the wall that's like the wall of Westeros. Well, that Jon scene, he's getting ready to go to the Weirwood Grove of 9 in that scene in order to swear in new recruits. Okay, that's very interesting because literally Jon's going to a weirwood place. And what am I saying? Dany and Jon have to go to the Heart of Winter and they're going to find weirwoods they have to mess with there. Well, Jon doesn't go to the Heart of Winter, but he does go to a weirwood grove north of the wall. So that is very interesting foreshadowing. And there's the link for Jon Snow White on Elisa Patience's YouTube channel. And I know you've got an Arya video coming out real soon too. So Jon's headed to the Weirwood Grove after he sees the icy banners, and they do some really interesting stuff there. They rush the grove. There's like penetrating the Weirwood net language. Then the giant roars to life like a boulder. So there's like moon explosion language. And yeah, I probably can't get into the whole scene right now, but it definitely lines up with the idea of journeying north to go to a weirwood place to do some important symbolic shit, if you will. So that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. And yes, get me to 30K. Please help me fight the YouTube algorithm curse. Smash the like, subscribe buttons. Click the bell. Check all to be notified of all things LML. Yes, thank you, Mr. Karsnak. Do you think there's a reason there isn't a weirwood at the wall or near the wall of the southern side? Well, so there are weirwoods at the wall. The weirwoods are growing up right up to the wall because the Night's Watch has stopped cutting the trees down. So there are weirwoods near the wall on the north side. At the Night Fort, there's a weirwood organism thing. It's the Blackgate face underground, and then it's sprouting a new weirwood tree up through the kitchens. So there's definitely weirwood action there. And I wouldn't be surprised to find weirwood elsewhere at the wall. So yeah, there actually is weirwood near the wall. And if you ask Wiz the Smith, he actually thinks that there could be weirwoods all along the seam where the wall was built, and that could be part of the foundation of the wall even. So yeah, could be. Does anyone know of the law of time, 13 moon calendar, and or the septenary gematria? I've heard those words, Matt Duke, but I don't know what they mean. If you want to hit me up on Twitter at the Dragon LML and start a conversation about that, we will draw all the occult folks on Twitter and we can have a chat about it. So that's the place to open it up. Or you can leave a comment on this video and see who knows about it. Yeah, let me go back, Kat, and check the PayPal. Yep, a couple more came in. Cassius, not sure if my questions didn't get through or just not in quite enough time. No worries. Yeah, Cassius, a lot of yours came through with no questions. So I don't know if maybe you tried to attach one and didn't, but just go ahead and tag me right now in the chat and I will get your question. Because we are in the last call for questions segments right now. Wasser 30 Golden Dragon says, I know about it. Heart eyes emoji. I'll start the conversation after the video. Nice, guys. Nice. So like I said, if I missed any questions, go ahead and tag me at Lucifer Means Lightbringer in the YouTube chat there. So I will see it and I will try to grab it before we head out, which I'm going to do in just a couple of minutes. Adam Woodford says, you know how Dany's house seal is a three-headed dragon in which it looks like the king, I don't know who this is, King Ghidorah, who is from space. Maybe he shows up to end it all. This is a reference to a show or a story. I don't know. I apologize, Adam. I don't know who that is, but you can follow it up if you want. And let's see, Shauna. Some say Miriam Mazdor performed a rite to bring down the moon on the pyre. This would make Dany an avatar of the triple goddess of the moon. I'm not sure what you mean by that, because Miriam Mazdor didn't do anything at the pyre. She just got tied up and burned. Well, she did do that ululating voice. That's true. But the moon doesn't, I mean, the moon stuff's only happening symbolically in that scene. So I don't feel like I'm getting the point of this question. She's definitely an avatar of the triple goddess, maid, mother, and crone. There's no doubt about that. She is definitely a maid and a mother. And the crone opens the door of death and let the first ravens through the world. She's going to become the leader of the crones when she goes to Vaes Dothrak. So yes, definitely. I mean, there's tons of triple goddess stuff in A Song of Ice and Fire. King Ghidorah is from Godzilla. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know my Godzilla. If I've seen it as a kid or something, I don't remember the story. Sorry, I'm not in on the joke. Joke's on me. I know the band Gojira. Yes, praise Garth, 420. Yes, Cat Daily. Do I think any kind of weirwood net exists within the frozen weirwood trees? Yeah, totally. So I think the weirwood net is essentially cut in half. And if you think about the Green Sea as the place where the Green Seers live, the others always have that frozen pond language, right? Their voice is like the cracking of a winter lake. There's a lot of frozen pond symbolism in some of their scenes. And of course, in Dante's Inferno, Lucifer is trapped inside of a frozen lake at the ninth circle of hell. So yes, I think there is a green sea and a frozen sea. I think the others are operating through the weirwood trees somehow. And I think that there is high potential for Bran or Bloodraven or anyone else inside the weirwood net to confront the great other or the spirit of dead Night King or Night's Queen or whatever force is moving the others. I definitely think can potentially interact with the weirwood net. So yeah, great question. I hope that was the PayPal that I missed. That was a good one. Let me see, Andrea. Did I miss your message? Let me see here. Where's the one from Andrea? Okay, tell you what, guys. If I find any PayPals that I didn't answer, I'll do what I usually do, which is to answer them in the comments field. I do that a lot, actually. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. We're right at 2 hours. So thanks, everybody. I will see you again for, like I said, a live Q&A sometime this week. And I will take, like I said, all questions from Patreon, anything you guys can throw at me, anything I find in the comments of the videos. So I'll see you again soon. Thanks for joining me. And yeah, oh, let me give a quick shout out to the artist who did this image here. I always put it in the description, but since I see someone commenting on it, let's see. This one is, sorry, let me move this to my upper screen here. YouTube, Daenerys. It is a lovely piece of art, and I like it because it sort of says just what I needed it to say for this video. Let's see. This one is Daenerys Targaryen and Drogon by Meeva. There you go. So thanks, Meeva. And thanks everyone who did all the great Dany art that I used in the Dany video. So I'll say take care. Like I said, please help me fight the YouTube algorithm curse by sharing the video on social media or wherever you hang out and talk a song of ice and fire. And I'll see you again real soon. Happy Sunday, guys.